Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Does it feel like it was just a couple weeks ago that we were here for the primary? Anybody else? Yes? It's a lot cooler this time, thank God. Welcome to our Pend Oreille County Candidates Forum. I'm Michelle Nedved, the publisher of the minor newspapers and the moderator tonight. Let's begin by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, tonight's forum is sponsored by the Greater Newport Area Chamber of Commerce, the Newport School District, and the minor newspapers. The forum includes candidates running in contested races for Pend Oreille Public Utility District Commissioner, Sheriff, Pend Oreille County Treasurer, Legislative District Number 7 Senate, and Legislative District Number 7 State Representative Position 1. Not with us tonight, unfortunately, are those running for Pend Oreille County Commissioner. Little hiccup with Position 2. Representative Joel Kretz, our incumbent, is in the audience right there, and he'll be around afterwards to talk to anybody who would like to. His Democratic challenger, Mike Bell, was unable to make it tonight. Also not with us tonight are two candidates running for county commissioner. As many of you know, Mike Maness is dealing with some health issues and is scheduled to have heart surgery this Friday to repair an aneurysm and 2 blocked arteries. So under his doctor's advice, he was not able to participate. Cheryl Miller decided out of respect for Maness's current medical condition and his family that she would not participate either, but I do have written statements from both of them that I will read here in just a few moments. All right. We have some unopposed candidates that are in the audience tonight. When I say your name, if you could just stand up and wave at everybody, that would be great. Prosecutor Dolly Hunt. There she is. Thank you, Dolly. County Assessor Jim McCroskey. Hello, Jim. County Auditor Marianne Nichols. County Clerk Tammy Ownby. And soon-to-be District Court Judge Robin McCroskey. The school district is airing this forum live streaming on Cubs FM, so thank you to David Bradbury and his students who are right back there who have done a wonderful job promoting this in the past. The questions tonight came from the public at large. Really great response from all of you, thank you. And our timer tonight is Nicole Carden, president of the Greater Newport Area Chamber of Commerce. And our accommodations are thanks to Dave Smith, superintendent of Newport School District. He's standing there in the back. We want to thank the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office and the Newport Police Department for their presence tonight. They're around somewhere. To be respectful to all candidates from here on out, let's hold applause until the end. And everybody, make sure your cell phones are off. All right, so this is for the general election. Ballots go in the mail on Friday, October 19th. Election day is Tuesday, November 6th, meaning ballots must be postmarked or dropped off at an official ballot box by 8 p.m. that day. There's one outside the old courthouse, and is there still one up in Ione, Marianne? All right. And new this year, you don't have to put a stamp on your envelope, which is pretty cool, I think. All right. So tonight we'll start with statements from Mike Maness and Cheryl Miller, and then we'll move on to the contested races who are up here. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We'll then have 5 rounds of questions. There's one question that everybody will answer, and then we'll have 4 rounds of questions specific to each race. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. When you have 30 seconds left, Nicole will hang up her yellow sign. And when your time is up, she'll hold up her giant red sign. We're going to try something a little new this time to kind of give a debate air to the night. Each candidate has 2 challenges. If your opponent says something in their answer that you would like to challenge or comment, raise your hand. And when they are done with their answer, you will have 1 minute to comment, and then they will have 30 seconds to rebut. And again, Nicole will hold your signs, or will hold her signs up. Let's see. We'll start after statements by Maness and Miller. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And then at the very end, we'll go back through and they'll have 1 minute to tell you why you should vote for them. All right. So on stage, I'm going to start here and just work my way down. We've got PUD Commissioner candidates Joe Only and Dan Peterson. Oh, no. Sheriff candidates Glenn Blakesley and John Carmen. Treasurer candidates Nicole Dice and Tom Watson. State Senate candidates Karen Hardy and Shelley Short, and state representative candidates Jacqueline Maycumber and Randy Michaelis. And with that, we'll get started with statements from Cheryl Miller and Mike Maness. All right, we'll go in alphabetical order here. So this is the statement from Mike Maness. As your county commissioner, I see myself as a keeper of this county, its finances, its business, and its industry. Due to recent health issues, my wife and daughters encouraged my retirement, but they support my desire to serve this community as a moral obligation to the citizens of Pend Oreille County. True to this, I cannot entrust your future to my opposition. As the most experienced, qualified candidate, I have nothing to hide. I can manage the human and natural resources of a healthy, growing community. Tomorrow, you'll read my endorsements in the Newport Miner, current and former elected officials, community leaders, and people who know and trust me. As a voting citizen in Pend Oreille County for 33 years, I'm uniquely qualified for the job. Raised in a small town, I chose to raise my family and do business in one too. I believe in having the best people working with us, hardworking, successful experts in their fields, whom I entrust within their agencies to make responsible management decisions, trusting science, not speculation, to allocate our natural resources for specific industries. I advocate improved forest management to decrease wildfires and maintain sustainable economic opportunities for land use by increasing timber harvest. I've testified to the Senate Natural Resources Committee, and I support the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition and Forest Service as we've recently achieved record timber harvests in the Colville National Forest. I've also worked with county, state, and public hospital officials to improve healthcare and mental health, which will in turn decrease prescription and illicit drug use and jail recidivism in our region. As a member of the Economic Development Council and a successful business owner, I work for you to promote the tourism, industry, and workforce development that benefit all of our citizens. Please vote to retain me as your county commissioner. I see the big picture for you, for me, and for the future of our families. All right, and this is our statement from Cheryl Miller. Good evening, everyone. I'm the person for the job because one other person and I stood up to run against Maness for office, and I won in the primary on the petition of change. I stand for change. A change from a heavy industry framework installed back to emphasis on the people and our way of life. Expansion northward from Spokane is well underway, so I'm very concerned if our county will receive this growth well. We need to maintain an attractiveness for entrepreneurs, potential business owners, and people starting families to come here and plant roots. We will need power for these roots. Rezoning may be a part of a housing solution, but to facilitate a silicon smelter 1.5 miles from downtown Newport, I am against. There are a great deal of issues to address, and just as diverse are the possible solutions. There's a distance between the public and the public servants that come about due to the personal service of Pend Oreille commissioners given to High Test PacWest. During this campaign, the majority of my constituency has voiced their concerns about the lack of accurate representation of their daily lives. A town hall meeting could be just the thing we need to come back together and heal this county. I'd like to start by petitioning the other commissioners to have an open town hall meeting once a month at pre-decided locations in Newport and possibly in the future, more outlining towns. It's my belief the majority of our issues can be resolved by working together. Public offices need to be reunited in action in conjunction with the surrounding committees and county as a whole. I love this county, our people, and our habitat. I will work tirelessly to see our storefronts full, prepare for the future growth, and protect the quality of our life for all future generations. Thank you for voting for Cheryl Miller for Pend Oreille County Commissioner. If you guys want to applaud for those two, go ahead. All right, so now we will give 2 minutes to each of our candidates up here on the stage to introduce themselves. And while they do that, I'm going to sit down front. We'll start with Joe Only running for PUD Commissioner.
Good evening. As introduced, I am Joe Only, and I'd be honored for you dedicated voters to consider the only choice for your next PUD Commissioner. First, I would like to thank you, the voters, for taking the time to be here this evening. Secondly, thanks to the Chamber, the Minor, and the School District for hosting this important event. I was a dedicated, proud, and visionary employee for 30-plus years at the PUD, now retired. When you work in the salt mine for a long time, you know where the salt is and where it is not. My distinguished opponent, the incumbent Commissioner Peterson, has served for 22 years. In campaigns, he has never been an employee of the district. I beg to differ. In his tenure, he has collected over $1 million in ratepayer money for salary, per diem, expenses, travel, insurance, and other benefits. If you are one of the 2018 fiber households in this very rural community, it was my vision, execution, and proudest accomplishment that sought and received a $27 million federal grant to make this happen. I oversaw the grant, the engineering, the technology, the construction, and deployment of this wonderful gift to our community. In the 10 years prior to that, I brokered a deal and oversaw the construction to build fiber from Newport to Spokane, such as our schools, community colleges, cell towers, libraries, hospitals, the remote pharmacy, ISPs, wireless services, and the cell towers in the north were hooked up a decade before most rural communities in our region. My family loves it here. So much so, we've even purchased our cemetery plots. My wife, Lynn, almost a 40-year cardiac care nurse, helped raise our 3 Newport K-12 graduate children, now a doctor, an architect, and a marketing research director. My vision for your PUD future is to keep our rates low and to investigate why they have risen so rapidly and set policy to contain the rates. Please pick up a brochure on your way out, and it may help you understand how my bright past will be powerful for a bright future for the PUD ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Dan Peterson for PUD Commissioner.
My name is Dan Peterson, and I'm running for PUD Commissioner. Focused on the future, building on the past. I've had some people say, Dan, you really haven't talked much in the campaign about your history, what great shape the PUD is in. I try to acknowledge that by saying I'm building on the past, but why am I focused on the future? Because that's where the greatest risks are for our utility. It's true we've accomplished some great things. We relicensed and rebuilt Box Canyon Dam for the remainder of its 50-year second license. We've secured our agreement with Seattle City Light for our entitlement to 48 megawatts of low-cost boundary power for the remainder of their license renewal. In spite of some hiccups along the road, we've been serving Pend Oreille newsprint for over 30 years with reliable, low-cost power that has kept them in business. So we have accomplished a lot. But as I said, our greatest risks lie in our future. I'm prepared and committed to helping guide this utility into that future. I'm done. Although I will finish by saying, as I have before, I've got 6 grandchildren that are being raised by their parents in this county. 6 of my 10 are here. And I want them, when they're paying this bill, that I'm very conscious of what the rate is and the basic charge is. I want them, when they're paying the bills, to be paying the lowest possible rates for the highest quality service we can provide. And that's my commitment to all of you.
Thank you, Dan. Glenn Blakesley, running for sheriff.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here. We like to see good crowds. We get our messages out better when there's a lot of people to listen. So my name is Glenn Blakesley. I am running for the sheriff's position. I've been in this community basically since I was born. I was born and raised in the north end of the county, graduated from high school there. Left for a few years, went and spent my time in the military. Left there, did some odd jobs, and realized that the world didn't have a whole lot to offer that we couldn't find here in Pend Oreille County, so we came back. I've been with the sheriff's office for the last 20 years. I started out, of course, as a deputy. I worked a little over 9 years answering your calls for service, responding to anything that was going on in your neighborhood. After that, I was promoted to a detective position. I spent a little over 2 years with a focus on drugs, major crimes and drugs. For the last almost 8 years, I've been a supervisor with the sheriff's office. What you realize is as you go through these different steps, you have different responsibilities. As a deputy, my responsibility was me. You'd call in something, I would go respond to it, I would handle it. I was required to take care of my actions, and that was it. When you become a detective, you start to work a little bit more. You have a partner you work with. You're working a little closer with confidential informants. You have to work a little closer with the courts, making sure you're doing things correctly. There's added responsibility. When you step up to a supervisor's position, it shows that your administration has faith in you and the things that you can accomplish. And you're now not only responsible for yourself, but you're responsible for everybody under you. For the last 8 years, I've done well at that. I believe I'll make a good sheriff. I understand what's gone, what the history has been in this community. I have great relationships with all of the agencies around us. I have a whole list of endorsements from several of them, and maybe we'll get to those today. It takes a lot of knowledge and background. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of training. Oh, she's showing me time's up, so maybe I'll get to the rest of it later. 300 hours of training just in supervisory issues.
Thank you, Glenn. John Carmen, running for sheriff.
Good evening. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm glad to see everybody here as well. This is an exciting time. Every election cycle that comes around is an exciting opportunity to have your voices heard, and I'm glad that you're here to exercise that voice. I have grown to love this community because I've spent time in this community since I was a very young child. I've lived in this community, though, for 16 years. I do live in the north end of the county, and it's an amazing place, but it's no different from the community in Elk where my parents live, or so many of my friends that live in the mid-county Cusick area. Everywhere you go in this county, it's built up of amazing people. It's for those people that I'm committed to running for sheriff in Pend Oreille County because of their voices that have spoken to me hundreds of times, thousands of times over the last 10 months talking about the change that they're looking for. I'm excited for the future of Pend Oreille County as we look at the economic prospects that can be coming here surrounding us. We have Amazon building a huge facility in Spokane. We see huge growth that's coming in Sandpoint, and as it all builds towards us, we have opportunities to see some great economic development within this own community with riverfront properties. Those people are looking for safety and security. Their number one problem that they're looking for is to know that they can feel safe to raise their families in and recreate. And our job as a sheriff is to be that guardian protector. And I'm very, very excited to be able to follow up on the plan that I've laid out that the voice of this community has asked for repeatedly. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up, Nicole Dice, running for County Treasurer.
Hello, I'm Nicole Dice, running for Pend Oreille County Treasurer. I grew up at the Grand Coulee Dam area where I graduated high school. I attended Spokane Falls Community College, got my AA degree, and I studied accounting and business. Moved to Pend Oreille County in 2009. My husband Dan and I have been married for 25 years. 2 daughters, Carly and Paige, that both graduated here at Newport High School, and 2 grandchildren who live in the county. I'm a local small business owner, and I'm currently employed in the Pend Oreille County Treasurer's Office as an accountant tax specialist, and I've been employed there since 2011. And I also have over 20 years experience in city and county government. And when people hear I work in the Treasurer's Office, they automatically think about taxes. But we actually do a lot more than that. We are the bank for the county, school district, fire districts, water sewer districts, and other local government entities. We also do their accounting, which means we do their receipting, investments, and their debt management. We also do land conveyance transaction and collect real estate excise tax for the sale of real estate in the county, manage over 20 bank accounts, have $23 million in investments, and in 2017 we had $61 million in revenue that came through our office, but our office budget is only about $300,000 a year. And speaking of which, taxes, we work real closely with the Pend Oreille County Assessor's Office to bill those taxes every year. And their statements come out in February, and the first half is due April 30th, and the second half is due October 31st. So for those of you out there who haven't paid your second half taxes yet or forgot for the whole year, come on and see us by the end of the month. And if you don't pay your taxes over time, we do have to go through tax foreclosure or personal property distraint. I would be honored to be your next treasurer, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And Tom Watson, running for Pend Oreille County Treasurer.
Is this thing on? All right, my name is Tom Watson. I'm running for Pend Oreille County Treasurer. Any of you may recognize me. I was the manager of the Ben Franklin store and Sprouse Right store before that. I've been in the community for 30 years. I've been a successful business person. Many of you have been in the store and can probably reference my character and that kind of stuff. You're probably my best references. My background is obviously in business, where I've been successful. I was responsible for all the finances and all the operations within that business. My college background is I have a bachelor's degree in management and organization with a minor in computer programming from Central Washington University. And so I've been involved in the business entity for a long time, and I've been successful at it. Right now I'm running for the county treasurer because I want to get back into this community. I'm currently working out of the area, and since we've closed the store, I would love to be back in this area. And I believe that the treasurer's position is an area that my expertise and my skills that I've learned over the years can be applied. The opportunity to work with a lot of community people, the opportunity to work with a lot of different entities, which I've worked with over the years, I think has positioned me for this position, and I think I can be very successful for you guys at it. A lot of people ask me why they should vote for me, and the question, or the statement is really ask your neighbors and your friends. If you guys don't know who I am, chances are they do. We've had thousands of people that have come through the store over the year. If you crunch the numbers and stuff, it actually goes into the millions. And so I've been very visible in the public, and you guys are my best reference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And Karen Hardy, you're running for state senate, and can you tell us your dog's name?
Hello. And my dog's name is Rio. And I'm going to stand up because I had a teacher in high school that would have smacked me for giving a speech sitting down. So, so some things just stick. My name's Karen Hardy, and I'm running to be your state senator. I was sitting here listening to all these people, and we're all running for the same reasons. We all love our community. We all think that there's something we can do And I really think that everyone sitting on this stage deserves a monicum of respect at the very least for stepping up to be a public servant. So I thank all of you who are up here. What I wanted to talk about tonight was, as I was sitting here, I was thinking, how many times have I been to meetings in Newport? And I think the first meeting I spoke at was at the Roxy. And I believe there were 400 people there that night, and I talked about my horse, which was kind of an interesting speech about doing what works. But then we had meetings here at the high school, and they were full. And I've been to multiple meetings, and now tonight we're choosing who's going to represent us and who's going to make the most important decisions for you and your family. And although it's a good crowd, it is nothing like the crowds I have seen in Pend Oreille County and nothing like the crowds I've seen in Newport. So I'm going to ask every single one of you to take this home with you and talk to everyone who's not here tonight, because this is important. This election, you are voting for your future. And you need to make some real clear decisions about what you want. Do you want 28 more years of what you've had? Do you want to continue to do the same thing? I talked about this last night in Colville, and I pulled up the last, I don't know how many voter pamphlets, and I did a little experiment in May. I don't know if you know, when you run for office, the very first thing you have to do is write your statement for the voter guide. It's the very first thing you do. So I read Shelley's. And from 2008 and 2012 and 2016 and 2017, the only thing that changed was that number of years. I've served you for 16 years, I've served you for 20 years, I've served you for 22 years. It's the same thing. She does the same thing, and you're going to get the same results. I'm asking for everyone, party aside, to vote for me this year so we have a chance at doing something different. So we have the opportunity to have something new, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh perspective, to bring our county and our district into the future. Thank you very much. My name is Karen Hardy, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Karen. And Senator Shelley Short.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here with you tonight. It has been such a privilege and an honor to represent you for the past 10 years, the last 2 of which are in the Senate. I want to talk a little bit about the work that I've done on your behalf in Pend Oreille County. It started, Karen talks about the years of experience, but those mean something to you because the very first thing I worked on was the hydropower relicensing. It was a point in time when agencies were going to use this county and the ratepayers as an open checkbook, and it would have cost you dearly. I was the person on the ground helping then Congressman Nethercutt put it into perspective and to push back on those agencies, and it saved this county millions of dollars in ratepayer expenses. I worked hand in hand with the PUD. I worked hand in hand with the community, and we pushed back hard. I knew every inch of that document. And it's how I've continued to carry forward. But I also want to talk a little bit about what Joel did too, because he pushed back when Seattle City Light wouldn't give you money for your schools and for your county. They did not want to give the funding that you deserved as they redid their license to make sure you had money for your counties and your schools. It's what we do. We get in, we dig in, and we make things happen. Now enter today, Hearst. You were all at a standstill with drilling wells unless you had tens of thousands of dollars in extra and added expenses, things that would have hurt your county in terms of its revenue. The 7th District was a part of the team that got it done. This year, the legislation that reopened your ability to drill wells and to have a productive county and to have productive property rights and to have revenue coming into your county and revenue coming into the state. I say those things because you get results with the work that I've done, and it has been such a tremendous honor to represent you, and I would ask for your support in November. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Shelley.
Hello. It's on.
And State Representative Jacqueline Maycumber.
I've been to a lot of candidate forums, but this is the first one where somebody promised a cemetery plot for a campaign promise. So this is officially my favorite. I am State Representative Jacqueline Maycumber. I am from Republic. I grew up in Republic and moved back to be with my family. I have a degree in biochemistry and was a law enforcement officer. I just want to talk about 2018 really quick. In 2018, I brought $280,000 for broadband and radio technology for our first responders. As you know, during the fires recently, they couldn't even communicate in some of the bluffs and the valleys. That was trouble when we were having those first response. Also, Representative Joel Kretz's legislation for making sure our volunteer firefighters have the right equipment to purchase. So DNR is now able to gift those to our rural firefighters and our volunteer firefighter districts, which has helped tremendously because you want to fight those fires at the source. In addition, I was able to bring $5 million for disaster and emergency response relief, so that's so important for our district when it comes to flooding and fire. Just recently, I was nominated for a United States New Legislator of the Year for Washington State nomination. I also received the Compass Legislator of the Year. I received a public fellowship to Harvard. That's where I was in July. I have worked very hard to represent you. I'll be continuing to work on what's called a veteran service officer in every county. That was part of my legislation last year. And in addition, allowing the Department of Fish and Wildlife to fight fuel mitigation for our natural habitat. So to make sure we don't lose that habitat to fires. Some of the areas when the fires were burning so hot, they were unable to have that their natural habitat for centuries. It looks like a moonscape, especially in Okanagan County. So I really appreciate your time. I was honored by the governor appointing me to the Ecosystem Coordination Board for the state of Washington and also the Water Mitigation Board. And that's a 2-year mitigation for water between municipalities, tribes, and the local ag groups. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And running for state representative, Randy Michaelis. Am I saying that right?
No.
Michaelis.
Are we using my minutes?
No.
Michaelis.
Michaelis, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Randy Michaelis. I'd like to spend a little time with you. It's really hard to introduce yourself in 2 minutes. So I'll just give you a quick overview of my life and a little bit of what I'm doing here. So I grew up in the Meade area. I went to Whitworth. I got a degree in biology. I became a teacher. I taught for 11 years in the Deer Park School District, the Meade School District. I had a little stint over in Auburn for a couple of years. And I early on had this conversion to Christianity. And when that happened in my life, I developed a mission statement, which I thought was kind of cool back in the time. And so my mission was to serve families and children and youth. And that's really what I've done. Over the years, I went to Whitworth. I was the director of computer education. I got a degree in math and computer science. I have a PhD from WSU. And I've been at Whitworth for 30 plus years. I was chair. I had all kinds of positions. You can read about me at randymichaelis.org. But I'm the dean of the School of Education. And I decided to run because of a number of things. One, I am not happy with our political environment. I know how to get things done. I have worked with people on the right and the left all my life to find a middle to solve a problem. The other thing I'm upset about is I'm upset away our schools are being funded. I was not a big fan of the McCleary decision, but I would have voted for it because it brought money to funding to little communities like this and schools. My opponent did vote against it. I am supported by the teachers. I don't believe everything the WA believes, but I believe that what they are doing is good stuff. I also believe that we need better health care, especially mental health care, in the 7th District. We do not have good, adequate resources for that. That's what I'm about. I know how to get things done. I would work for you. I don't need this job, and I would ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So once again, we're going to try and keep all the applause until the end. We would really like to keep this under 2 hours so we can all go home to our families. We're going to start with, I have one question from a member of the public, and it's for all of you, so we'll just start with Joe and go right through Randy. And that question is, who is your biggest individual, corporate, or personal financial donor to your current campaign?
Two words, my wife.
I have not received any contributions for this campaign.
Me.
with mine, I think they're pretty much equally across the board. The largest contribution that I had was through a fundraiser this year.
My husband and myself.
My husband, or my wife, I should say. Hi. No. I have had contributions from some family members and a couple of independents in the community, but mostly me and my family. So thank you.
Thank you for the levity.
Well, I'm proud to say that most of my contributions come from people just like you. My biggest contributor, however, is me. And then aside from that, I have a couple of max contributions, one from a union and one from someone else I can't recall. But I'm kind of the Bernie Sanders approach. $27 or $30 is my average contribution.
So my contributions came from a number of associations and corporations that actually we work with and do business with in the district who have association with the district, but also our numerous fundraisers and individuals letters that we sent out to donors. So,
Karen, you're challenging? Okay. So hand the microphone back to Karen.
So I actually have a chart of Shelley's contributions outside in the hall if you guys want to look. And her contributions come from corporations, very few of which are actually in the 7th, and they don't represent the people in the 7th. Well, she's got funding from Avista, but they actually are here. But there's Pharma, Eli Lilly. Just go look at the list. It's a whole list of Koch brothers supporters, and she's supported by big corporations, not local people.
And Shelley?
So actually the votes I make for you, and the money I give, actually the majority of that actually goes to our caucus to fund races against Seattle liberals that want to raise income taxes, carbon taxes, and fuel mile travel taxes. So it's something that both caucuses do. My votes are for you. Thank you.
Jacqueline?
This is a rough. Actually, quite a few of I'm really proud of all my donations, so please go look it up. Most of them are from, like received donations from the Retired Teachers Union. I've received donations from the Washington Principals Associations. I've received donations for Republican and Democrat groups, some the International Firefighters Association and local unions. And my largest, they all maxed out on me, both sides. And I received Compass Legislator of the Year, also received max donations from those groups. Truly, it's an honor, and I'm proud, so thank you.
Yes.
So, do I get to talk? Is this my minute, or how do we do this?
No, so you have a minute to challenge her, and then
Okay.
you'll also have time for your own answer.
I don't know if you folks, if it matters to you, but you should go to a site that's called pdc.wa.gov. You should do that to be an informed voter. And you should see who gives people money. So what you would see is the top, what you can do is you can max out at 2,000, 1,000 per election, okay? So what you'll see if you look at my opponents is that the top 10 ones that max out that show up on that website are from out of the state, and they're largely involved with pharmacy and healthcare.
You have 30 seconds to
I
rebut.
am really proud of my healthcare. I actually helped write a striker for pharmaceutical transparency. I have a biochemistry degree. It was a Democrat striker, and to make sure we can have innovation for the cures for cancer and free medicine. So what happens is pharmaceutical companies are able to donate those medicines and those pharmaceuticals, and I am happy and proud, and I will continue to work on those issues in a bipartisan manner. And please go ahead and look it up. I have received not only donations, but also endorsements from both sides, and I'm proud of that.
All right, and now Randy, you've got 2 minutes for your answer.
Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about my donations. If you look at my pie chart, so if you go to pdc.wa.gov, you'll see my pie chart is almost entirely individuals. And so these are people that know me, that have worked with me from across the state, that have been willing to donate with their money to vote for me with their dollars. I have a few major contributions from the WEA, from the Carpenters Union, the grocery workers, but those are my top ones. The rest of those are from people. There's a retired judge in Tinasket Republic. There you go. One of my colleagues in the 7th has given me, maxed it out. But 88% of Jacqueline's 88% of her pie chart is PACs or businesses. And I don't know about you, but I get nervous when somebody says most of their money comes from pharmacy, and I'm not entirely sure I believe the explanation. My votes come from the people that I know that have supported me all my life. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Can we get a microphone back down to Joe? Okay, so that was the one question we had for all of you, and now the questions from here on out will be specific to your race, except the four of you will get the same questions. All right, so first PUD question, and we're going to start with Joe only. Pend Oreille County has relatively cheap power. How in your role as commissioner do you intend to keep rates low? Do you see them increasing in the near future?
Can you hear me now? Okay. Now I forgot the question. Keeping rates low. I think our rates have risen kind of in an astronomical fashion compared to our neighboring utilities, and it's my purpose to see kind of why that is. I'd like to see if we can do some cost containment things, and I think they've been working on it. I think our employee count has kind of been reduced since I have left there. Kind of got to look at that, see if there's other resources, get long-term contracts for our power. But I'm concerned that our rates are what they are. I kind of have a little ditty talking about our rates have gone up 230%, and inland is 160%. And for those that remember, we took over Inland Power and Light here in Pend Oreille County in early 1990. And it's actually cheaper to be an Inland Power and Light customer now, and it used to be twice as much. If you use a little energy, and that's because the basic rate, or they have some special name for it, it's pretty high. I'd like to see why it's high, see if we can equalize it, do something.
Thank you. Dan, you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
All right. Pend Oreille County has relatively cheap power. How in your role as commissioner do you intend to keep rates low? Do you see them increasing in the near future?
So the primary way the commission works to keep rates low is to hold the PUD staff, and particularly the management staff, accountable for how the district is operated, both from the revenue side and from the expense side. And the way you keep rates low is you cut expenses and you increase income. That's how it works for all of us, including the PUD. We've had, as you've seen in the media, there's load growing in our county, which is a good thing, regardless of where it comes from. For the health of everyone's rates, that's a good thing. As Joe mentioned, he's right. There's been a reduction in our employee count. The current general manager has been serving us for 3 years now, and we've charged him with keeping the rates low, and I do not foresee any large rate increases. If they've risen astronomically, it's amazing at what they must have been, because now on this bill, the energy rate is 0.0511 cents per kilowatt hour. As Joe mentioned, the service availability charge, that is a fancy word, is $30.50, and there's a reason for that I can explain when we have the time.
Thank you, Dan. All right, next up are sheriff candidates, and we'll start with Glenn Blakesley. While working for the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office, have your actions ever caused a lawsuit in which Pend Oreille County had to pay out money?
Yes.
Please explain.
Very early in my career, I got called out one night. It was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to a disturbance. I went out by myself to the disturbance. Encountered some youngsters that were in a vehicle, a lot of other things going on at the time. I should have called for some additional help, and I didn't. I got wrapped up in what was going on with a unruly juvenile that was in the vehicle, and while attending to him, overlooked some other things that were going on. A couple of young ladies left the scene. I allowed them to leave the scene. They thought it was wrong that I did not address some alcohol issues with them. and went driving around town and ultimately were involved in a car crash. And one of them was severely injured. And yes, the county got sued, and yes, the county paid out for that.
Thank you. What'd you learn?
A lot. Number one, I'm very grateful to the administration at the time. They were very reasonable with me as far as their actions. I use that as a story, as an example for the new deputies. Virtually every deputy that's in a department now or since then knows that story, and most of them, because I have told them that story, I use it as a lesson of what not to do. When you think you're getting in over your head, you call for assistance. It is not a sign that you can't handle things. It's just a sign that it's good common sense. And you can't overlook things. You can't get caught up in the moment. We have a job to do, and we must do it to the best of our abilities. So, yeah, I tell that story as an example for everybody else to hopefully not have that issue again.
Thank you. John, you want me to repeat the question?
No, I have a good grasp on it. I've been mentioned in several lawsuits because I've been present on scene when they occurred, but no lawsuits have been filed because of my actions.
Great, thank you. All right. Treasurer, we'll start with Nicole. What is your overall theory on financial planning, and how will you implement that if elected, and have you ever declared bankruptcy?
Okay. Overall, financial planning is just to maintain what we're doing in the office. Right now, our monthly, balancing reports, where we check revenue and work with the auditor's office on expenditures to make sure everybody is in the positive, nobody's in the negative. And for investing, normally we do LGIP. We have recently went out and did, a bond, a low risk bond, since interest rates are increasing. So one of the things we'll do is just kind of watch interest rates, see what's out there to make sure we protect the public's money, but at the same time, where the public, we can earn the most money that would benefit the public as well. And the last part of your question, I've never filed bankruptcy.
Tom?
Basically, my financial responsibility would be with the finance committee. There's a finance committee that supports the treasurer's office, so the decision isn't made just by one person. Personally, I'd like to see there's $23 million roughly invested. Most of it is in the local government investment pool. Roughly 98% of that $23 million is invested there. If those funds really, truly are not needed, I would actually like to see, now that interest rates are changing, I would like to see us take a little bit harder look at some of the bonds or the short-term investments and stuff, less than a year, with the opportunity of perhaps picking up 0.5%. Right now, the yield on the investment pool is roughly 2%, 2.01% on a yield. If we can even pick up 0.5%, that's a 25% increase in our investment income. And so it could make a real difference. We have to be very careful with your guys' money, because it is your money, it's not mine. But there are some very strict rules that govern those investments and what we can do and invest in those policies. But I would like to take a look at some of those. Also, some of the entities, some of the fire districts and stuff that have been extremely, financially frugal, and they have serious amount of money. They have input on what we do with their money. I don't know if anybody's told them that, but if they want to see some investments that might be a little bit longer term, because they know they're not going to be needing it for a while, those opportunities may exist. Obviously, we want to make sure we maintain the responsibility to meet all of our monthly demands and make sure that all the warrants and stuff are paid in a timely manner, and also educate any entity that's looking at debt. I would like to spend some time educating them, because debt may not be the answer. There may be some other alternatives in cutting their expenses to accomplish the same thing.
And have you ever filed for bankruptcy? No. Thank you. All right. And we are on to State Senate. Karen Hardy. Why are you running for office? What is the #1 issue facing residents in Pend Oreille County that you have a plan to address?
I'm so glad you asked. Why am I running for office? I'm running for office because I didn't need a job. I needed a good legislator. Because when I reached out, because I had issues that I needed help with, no one answered. I'm running because I think we can do better. Washington State's the #1 state in the nation to do business. Washington State has one of the biggest economies, growing economies. Washington State has notoriously, or I know notorious is the right word, but really good education and healthcare. And when you look at it as the whole state, it looks like we live in nirvana. But that's not what my neighbors are experiencing. That's not what people around here are feeling. And so what I want to do is to get some equalization. When one party represents one area for so long, you lose that other voice in the room. And it's important that we send people, so no matter who's in power in Olympia, that we are represented. From 1945 to 1960, Democrats and Republicans both represented this area. We had a mix. It was working then. I want to go back to when it was working, and so that's why I ran. The thing that I think is the biggest issue right now is health care. And I have this handy-dandy little book, which kind of goes back to my little challenge a minute ago. And they sent it to me, and I think they sent it to me on accident, honestly. It's from the Policy Guide, which is a very right-wing kind of think tank policy making. And it's what they send you when you get money from corporations, and they have the legislation already written out. And the very first thing on the health care says, repeal the Affordable Care Act. That's what they're telling your legislators who are taking that money that we were talking about earlier. This is what they send them. It's already written. This is what they want them to do. Access to health care is the #1 problem in this district. If we repeal the Affordable Care Act, your hospital will close. That is the only thing keeping your hospital open. Think about that. Think about this community without a hospital. We have to protect our hospitals.
Thank you. And Shelley?
Thank you so much. You know, it has been a journey, and using the experience that I've garnered working with agencies fighting for you to get things done. I have and will continue to have good bipartisan relationships I've built across the aisle. And that is what I would like to continue doing for you, regardless of the issue you need help with, is to take that experience, to take the relationships that I've garnered, and quite frankly, tough stance with agencies. I don't take what they say. You know, I work in and I dig in and I make sure that what they're saying is what they're going to say. And I would agree, healthcare is a huge topic. Access to healthcare and the health and financial wellness of the facilities and the providers that provide it. I actually worked on a piece of legislation that was signed into law by the governor this year when people were being denied access to specialty care. Access they had coming to them in their insurance plans, but the insurers were using third-party managers to prevent them from access to that. I'm really proud of that. There's more work to be done. But on the challenge of Obamacare, and the biggest challenge to our critical access hospitals were the Democrats. Several years ago, they actually sought to get rid of, there was legislation presented in the budget that would have cut critical access funding. Joel and I fought that. We fought it really hard because we knew what that meant. The second piece is as we add people onto the Medicaid rolls, we need to be careful how we do that, because the Medicaid reimbursement is actually the lowest of all of the programs out there in terms of reimbursement, both for the hospital, for doctors, physicians, you know, your ambulance providers, and the like. So we need to make sure it's balanced. It is a huge issue, and I look forward to continuing to work on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There's three more after this one. Jacqueline.
Thank you so much. Ooh, am I good? Okay, now you can start the timer. Okay. I decided to run last year. My husband and I came together. We were talking about our children and wanting to make sure they could live in the area, in the Tri-County area. We have 100 years within where we are living on our family ranch, and I didn't want to say goodbye to my kids when they graduated. So we came together as a team, and I have been working day and night to make sure that I believe equal access to broadband. Broadband is the great equalizer, I say, on healthcare clinics, and making sure that we have education, and making sure that you have equality at home, that you can work from home or you can access things. So I've been working very hard, as some of you know, meeting with the governor, meeting with people to make sure we can come together and get that job done and provide funding for that. So I'm very excited about that. I wrote legislation, I co-sponsored legislation, correct that, to make sure that we have an insurance policy still within the area. For health insurance, I wanted to work bipartisan on that, so I'm very excited about that. I supported the governor's opioid bill. I believe that's as a former law enforcement officer, that's a big deal in our area, making sure that we support those individuals. And I supported mental health funding and was a co-sponsor on the farmer suicide bill. So I've been working very hard for the issues within the area and making sure that my children have a better community and can come back, because I believe when they come back, they make it better for us. When we retire, we need youth and entrepreneurs to come back with great ideas, and we are there, and I am excited for the future. I'm excited for the committees I am on, and I'm excited that the 7th District is moving in the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Randy Michaelis.
All right, how many minutes do I have? 2 minutes? Okay. I think, I've done a bunch of these. It's kind of fun to do them. I remember where Captain Kirk says, Mr. Sulu put up the force field and force shields. How am I getting it? You know what I'm talking about? And so as soon as everybody finds out I'm a Democrat, I watch the shields come down. So I'm asking you just lift them up a bit and see who I am. I am running as a Democrat. I don't think Joel or Jacqueline or Shelley are bad people. When I work at Whitworth, I prepare teachers. And one of the things we don't let them be is somebody that just goes and keeps school. You know what that looks like? You show up, you do this page, you do this page, you do what you need to do, you keep school. What we want in the teachers we produce, or the principals or the counselors, we want people for vision. I've worked for years at Whitworth where we create strategic plans. I try to look 10 years down the road at what's going on with the university, with the School of Ed. I try to say, what's happening? Where do we need to position ourselves so that we're in a good place? That feels to me like what's lacking for the 7th. This feels like it has been too long in the hands of folks that are probably decent folks, but don't have vision. I'm shocked that we're still talking about broadband. This is 2018. Where have we been? 28 years. One party's been in charge. Doesn't feel to me like that's been visionary. So I'll bring stuff to you on healthcare. I'll bring stuff to you in education. But what I'm really good at doing is sitting down with people and building a vision for where we might be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, head back down to the PUD. And we're going to reverse order this time, so Dan, you get to go first. Ready? There's your Star Wars reference. What concerns and questions have PUD constituents and stakeholders been sharing with you during the campaign?
Once more.
What concerns and questions have PUD constituents and stakeholders been sharing with you during this campaign?
Well, I think everyone's aware that the PUD's sale, legal sale, by the way, of land to an industrial developer on property near Newport has been a large focus of attention. And, you know, it's easy to say, well, it's in litigation, so I can't comment, but that's silly. We had an issue this summer, just a few folks, and it wasn't necessarily related to the campaign, but when the lights start blinking and they keep blinking and it ruins an irrigation pump, it's a problem. And so we always receive comments when service is not up to par. And in this case, it was a relatively limited area, but it was a huge mystery, even for our experts, and it took us a while to get it solved, and maybe it's not entirely solved yet. So those questions come whether there's a campaign or not. And that, of course, is always the case as a commissioner. we've been frank about the, there's been questions and concerns voiced through the campaign, of course, with the attention recently with the lawsuit with Pond Oreille Newsprint Company and the settlement of that. We also had a lawsuit with our large international hydro company that did the rebuild at Box, and we settled that. And those get attention. And my perspective has been, we're a small utility. We've got great, sharp staff that work for us, but big companies sometimes seek to take advantage, and we're not going to allow that. And in both those cases, we stuck to our guns, and the results were good, in spite of it being a bad lawsuit. That's my time.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Joe, same question. Do you want it repeated?
That'd be nice.
All right. What concerns and questions have PUD constituents and stakeholders been sharing with you during the campaign?
Well, early on, I sent out a brochure, and I kind of bragged on my family and said what I did. And my wife is a nurse, Lynn, over here. And one of the first calls I got was a lady very concerned about electromagnetic fields. And my wife, Lynn, actually answered the phone, and she said she'd rather talk to her than to me because she was a nurse. So that was kind of the first one that came out. I get a lot of comments about the high basic charge, the people that don't live in their homes all year round, and it's way too much money, and et cetera, et cetera. And I understand it. I know there's a cost to having the lights come on Thanksgiving when you show up at your cabin. And I will echo about the PNC suit. I guess I'll be finding out some more information if things pan out. That $50,000 a month is going back to the PNC. If it makes them happy, kind of makes the ratepayers wonder where that $50,000 is coming from per month. That's over $500,000 a year. I'd say those couple of things are probably primarily what I've heard as feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And on to the sheriff's race, and we'll start with John Carmen this time. Who would be your undersheriff, and what law enforcement training and credentials does he currently hold? He or she, I guess.
So my undersheriff is Jim Hall. He's currently a police officer with the Kalispell Tribal Police. He holds he's Washington State General Authority Peace Officer. He also has a federal equivalency as well as a tribal. So he has 3 certifications that go with him. He's had a very varied law enforcement career that spanned from the East Coast all the way back here. He has grown up in this area in the north end of the county as well as in the Colville area. And he moved back from the East Coast to get a job here in rural Washington to move closer to home. And he's currently employed right here in the county, and he is an amazing individual. I'm really excited to have him on board because we share so many great views as far as leadership and where we want to go and take this community, and an ear that's open not only to the public but also to looking for ways to improve the public services that we provide to this community. And he's just an amazing man. And on some of my Facebook stuff, we have several things that he's spoken and introduced himself. And I would encourage everybody to go there and take a look. And if you run into him, please stop and talk to him. You will fall in love with him as everybody else has as we've been out on the campaign trail, because he truly cares about this community. And this is home to him, and we're excited to be a team that's going to make Pond Oreille County safer and a wonderful place to live.
Thank you, John. Glenn, would you like the question repeated?
Please.
All right. Who would your undersheriff be, and what law enforcement training and credentials does he or she currently hold?
Okay, so my choice is Jeff Rusho. Okay, he's currently our jail captain at the sheriff's office. His career started a long time ago, I believe almost 27 years ago, over in Bonner County and Priest River area. He's held many positions over there. helped with, actually he's been involved in the reserve program over there. Canine handler, patrol deputy, Marine Patrol, was promoted to a sergeant over there. After I believe it was 18 years over in Bonner County in that area, he came over to work for us. Started as a court security officer, developed our program, which is still running today, keeping our court safe on court days. He was quickly promoted to the jail captain's position, where he's responsible for virtually everything that happens back in the jail, including the budgets and medical needs of the inmates, safety of everybody, work projects, the day-to-day operations. I mean, the list just goes on and on of what he's involved in. Has had some certifications as an executive for jail wardens and those types of credentials. He's also, as far as I can tell, still listed as a reserve in the state of Washington, holds his certificate. I've talked many times to the state. They uphold that his certificate is good. You know, he continues to do some reserve activities for us in Marine Patrol, court security, and many other duties.
All right. So you've been in, oh, John would like to challenge. So you have 1 minute to challenge.
It should be pretty quick. I also know who his undersheriff is, and truly, he is a good person, and I like him, and he's worked very diligently for this community as well. But two of the things that Mr. Blakesley failed to mention, that he's not a general authority peace officer. He does hold only a Washington State Reserve certificate, which means, per law, they do not recognize that when you become full-time, and he would have to go back to the full academy, 19-week academy. And so he can hold an administrative position as undersheriff, but he does not have any arrest powers until he goes back and gets that.
Thank you. And Glenn, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Review RCW, what's like 1093.020.5, talks about the special commissions available under the state. For an undersheriff position, literally I could point to anybody in this room and say, you are my undersheriff, and if you accept it, it is what it is. I, as a sheriff, can give you a special commission, and under certain circumstances, you can actually go out, make traffic stops, and help with arrests and all those types of things. The difference is I want my undersheriff to be doing a lot of administrative duties. He's going to be running 5 different departments, so going to be pretty busy, probably won't have a lot of time to go do traffic stops.
Thank you. All right, and now we are on to the treasurer race. And this time, Tom will answer first. One of the chief duties of the county treasurer is to collect taxes. Are the current penalties for non-payment of taxes adequate? Should they be softened or made harsher?
As far as the current penalties go, I'm not sure exactly what those interest rates and stuff are, or what those penalties are. I know that interest starts to accrue basically the day after you didn't pay your taxes on time. I know that there's a specific percentage of interest, and then there would be a fee for any of that those late taxes and stuff. I think the position that I would take as far as on late taxes is obviously we want people to pay their taxes, and the penalties are enforced in an incentive for people to do so. But I had a chance to talk with our current treasurer a month or so ago, and there's some work that's being done on helping people to pay their taxes and to set up payment plans and stuff, which hasn't been done in the past. And really, I would really like to promote something along those lines. If we can get people, Terry and I commented, and we called it a Christmas fund. I know our meeting was very formal. It took place at the fairgrounds. But she gave me some great insight on the office. Unfortunately, taxes have to be paid. That's what supports your sheriff and the rest of your community as far as the infrastructure and stuff like that. That has to be paid. There has to be a penalty involved. But if we can come up with a formula to help people to pay those taxes, it's going to benefit us. It's going to go lower our cost of having to collect those taxes, and it'll give you guys a greater benefit and stuff in it. And so I'd really like to promote that side of it, with the understanding, if I have to, unfortunately, yes, I will do the distraint, I will do the foreclosure, and it's just going to be part of my job, although it's not something I would necessarily like to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Nicole, would you like the question repeated? All right. One of the chief duties of the county treasurer is to collect taxes. Are the current penalties for non-payment of taxes adequate? Should they be softened or made harsher?
All right, well, the rates are set by the state. It's 1% interest per month, and then 3% penalty in June, and 8% in December. We have those, as an incentive for people to pay them on time. People can do payment plans. It's been around for quite a few years now. It's mainly for people who are behind on their taxes as a way to catch up. They are still charged interest, and penalties if they're late, even if they are on a payment plan. There's restrictions that are set by the state of Washington, like you have to be current on your current year's taxes and then, work towards your behind taxes. Can't really have a fund for people to pay into. I know there's escrow companies out there that if people need help that they can work with. By state law, we cannot collect taxes for that current year until after the tax rolls are certified by the treasurer. Usually that happens sometime in the end of January.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, on to the state legislative candidates. And this time we will start with Senator Short. Are you ready for this one? What are your thoughts on the proposed silicon smelter in Pend Oreille County?
Sure. I support it as long as they can do it in accordance with the strict environmental standards, water quality standards, air quality, water, and the like. We have in Washington State some of the most strict and stringent rules and regulations surrounding human health, air, water quality, and the like. It is their job at this point to prove that they can do this, and it's up to them. It's up to them. I'm not going to prejudge this project. When I first became aware of the company, they came in to visit, and you all know, I know you know that they were looking at a site in Stevens County. And the thing I said to them, if they couldn't do it in Stevens County, was to do it somewhere in the 7th District. It was up to the company to choose where they felt the site best fit for them. But the thing, when I look at our schools and when I look at our families and I look at the importance of manufacturing and that, I was eager to work on that kind of employment. We need those family wage jobs. We need things like it that provide for our schools. They provide funding for local governments to be able to provide the services that they need. And I'm not saying this is going to be it, but as your state senator, when I get someone coming to me, to seek that kind of assistance, as the possibility of doing work in, the 7th District, I'm going to look at that really hard. I think you'd want me to. Now, I know that you don't want it here, and originally that wasn't where it was supposed to be, but I don't believe that my job is to prejudge the project or to prejudge this company. We work really hard to bring jobs into the 7th District, and I'm going to be watching this very closely to ensure that the regulatory agencies do their job. But I think they will, and there's a high bar. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Once again, I would ask, out of respect for all of us here, if we could keep the snarky comments to a minimum. Karen?
Okay, where do I stand on the smelter? Well, all those meetings I talked about earlier, most of them were actually about the smelter. And more than wanting to talk about the smelter, I want to talk about your senator's role in this. And when she talks about I don't want to prejudge. Well, prior to where it was decided where it was going to be, prior to it being chosen to be in Newport, she wrote legislation for a tax incentive. Seems like prejudging to me. That if we're going to have it, I want it in my district. And I don't really care about how it's going to affect my district. I want it in my district. The legislation that she wrote for the silica smelting, and there aren't any other silica smelters, just so when you read that, there aren't any others in the state, has a flaw in it. And it says that you get to keep that whole tax incentive, everything you make from this B&O tax incentive, if you have one employee or you pay them annual wage. And I hope you challenge this because I want you to read it. I posted it online. This does not guarantee jobs. This does not guarantee more than one job, and it doesn't guarantee family wage jobs, and it doesn't guarantee prevailing wage jobs. I want you to have jobs, but since our senator has been in the legislature, and even when she was working for Nethercutt, and even when she was doing the other things that she's done, we have lost jobs. Since 2008, we have fewer jobs in the 7th than we did when she was elected. Think about that for a minute. Where else in the state of Washington are there fewer jobs in a legislative district than 10 years ago? We have lost jobs in 10 years. So of course High Sands, Pac West, or whatever they're calling themselves, came to her. You want to build a polluting thing, you're going to go to the poorest district that is the most desperate for jobs, and they're going to be happy to get them. I think you deserve better. I think the people of Pend Oreille County deserve better, and I think there's a better place for this. If we need a smelter, let's make sure we put it in the very, very best place, and this is not it.
All right, and Shelley gets 1 minute
Yes.
to challenge.
Yes, so absolutely. Actually, what's really interesting is my opponent actually wrote me a quick email saying she supported the tax incentive legislation. I very much disagree that it protects it just for one job. We worked very hard with my Democratic colleagues to come up with what they call a clawback, which is expectations for receipt of any kind of tax incentives that they had to have, you know, the minimum, at least a minimum of 100 jobs. And the wages had to be at least, it was 10% above the average annual wage in the county. And I think it stands to say that if they don't provide those things, if they are able to do business, then they would have to pay it entirely back, every last cent. And oh, by the way, I also have the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee making sure that the parameters we put into place are the right ones. And I don't know about you, there are a lot of reasons that jobs go in and out of this district, but the thing, when a company comes to you, I think it's incumbent to at least look at it and see if it's a possibility. Thank you.
And Karen, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
So yeah, I really do. I challenge you all to go read it. I have it posted on my website. I have it highlighted. Read it carefully what it says. It says, it has an and in there. It says that you have to have, in order to lose this, and it's written in the negative, so you have to read very carefully, but in order to lose it, you have to have less than 100 people and less than an annual average wage, not prevailing wage, not 10% over, it just says annual wage. So read it carefully and understand. The devil is always in the details. Legislation is very difficult. Read it carefully and understand that while she might believe that's what she did, that's not what she did.
All right, thank you, Karen. And we'll go down to Randy, the same question. What are your thoughts on the proposed silicon smelter in Pend Oreille County?
I grew up about a block away from where Kaiser is, down, and we watched, during the Expo 74, we had Russian folks here because we had the Russian exhibit. And I was just a teenager or something at that point, 20s, and the Russian scientist was here, and he looked at our trees, and he said, "Oh, you must have an aluminum smelter near you." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Your lichen is ill. It's not doing well." I grew up with all those Kaiser kids whose parents ended up with some serious health issues. I have family that lived in Northport that are downstream on the Columbia from the, I can never remember how to say this, but what's the smelter up there? There. And I watched the health. My first meeting with you folks was downtown with the Cans group, and I walked away going, I don't know. Sounds like a lot of, or could be a lot of hyperbole. I make a living doing lots of things, but part of what I do is research. Went home and I started looking. And I started looking, what is the environmental impact on this? And I'm pretty good at getting into our library's databases, and I was having a hard time finding a decent answer. So I started calling up my friends who are biochemists and saying, what's this thing gonna do? And I work at a university. I'm full of, biomedical research scientists. I have the real ones there. And they started looking, and they couldn't find good answers for me. And I thought, okay, I'm smart, they're smart. This feels to me like this is rushed and maybe not well thought out. So that is, besides the transparency issues that seem to be a problem of passing it in, that's why I'm opposing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jacqueline.
I just have to wait till they get their moment. So I was elected after the governor had given a few $100,000 for the clean energy for that proposal. I have not voted on anything. However, I have voted on lowering the B&O tax for manufacturers in the state of Washington to equal that of Boeing. That was a Democrat bill, and I did support that because I believe that all manufacturers should pay an equal amount. I'm a part of the Ecosystem Coordination Board, as I said before, and I really believe in our environmental policies, as does the governor, and our clean energy policy. So we're moving into a more, as I voted on before, and please, everyone look at TVW when you're bored at night, because then you'll hear all these speeches, and it'll be less than 2 minutes, and you can hear us drone on and on if you need to go to bed late. Making sure that we have solar power and wind power is so important, and the governor is moving in that direction. I've been voting for bills that move us in that direction, and he believed this was an idea. Right now, because you're in the public comment period, it is not a position of a sitting legislator. I can't do anything for the proposal or make an opinion that switches it in any way, and neither can the governor, and that's why he hasn't. You have the power to change the location, and you have the power to make your comments heard to the Department of Ecology. I have yet to see the environmental impact statement because it hasn't been published. I know the governor's office is looking at it. We are all looking at it. So when that gets done by the Department of Ecology, we'll be able to see. I think we're all, including Democrats and Republicans, excited about the future of clean energy, excited about the cleanest manufacturers in the world are here in Washington State. What happens is you get leakage, and then they go and manufacture in China, and then we purchase those products, and the carbon pollutions, and they ship it across the oceans are 100 times more. So we're really trying to keep clean energy local.
Thank you. All right, back down to the PUD. You have a microphone? Joe, we're back to you answering first. Good? All right. What is the current PUD doing well? If elected, what changes would you like to see in the next 5 years?
Well, I think they're doing an awesome job providing us with electricity and quality power at low cost. It's reliable. We had a microstorm come through a couple nights ago, and it's unreliable. And then I did work in the salt mine for 30 years. When I drive down the road, the one thing I stare at is those trees that are 70 foot tall going near a 30-foot power line. And it's inevitable, if you want to live in this beautiful country, that trees are going to come through power lines. And then regrettably on those power lines are now the fiber optics. And so now the fiber optics kind of come down. So then services are interrupted. As you probably heard, fiber optics, very near and dear to me. I would like to see that expanded if possible. It can only be probably done through federal grants like we did kind of the first phase of the county. But I'd like to see that kind of grow over the next 5 years. It's a good company. I was proud to be part of that for 30 years, and I think in the next 5 years, if somehow I get the information and kind of understand it more, I'd like to kind of keep the rate stable. That's my main goal.
Fantastic, thank you. Dan? What is the current PUD doing well? If re-elected, what changes would you like to see in the next 5 years?
Joe mentioned trees. A few years ago, we decided it would be more efficient and productive to have an in-house tree trimming crew. And those of you that have trees, you understand how this works, and we're doing tree trimming really well. We used to pay a contractor, and they'd come in and do their thing and leave, and if we needed a little extra money, we'd say, oh, let's skip tree trimming this year. And that doesn't work. So I think we're doing well at that. here in the project area where Joe's project is taking effect. We heard a report today, people continue to take high-speed access subscriptions through our retail service providers. The wholesale backbone that provides all of that that's on those poles and in the way of those trees continues to serve people really well. We already mentioned the electric, the water systems that we supply, the Box Canyon project itself, just finishing up a rebuild, and we're trying to finish up a fish ladder. We've managed those things very well. Changes in the next 5 years. I think we're on the right trajectory. My biggest concern, as we've talked frankly about it, is if and when Andre Newsprint Company ceases business. We have a hydro project that currently, because of those license improvements and our environmental mitigation, has power that's above market. And so one of our biggest challenges and changes in the next 5 years is probably going to be to find another customer for Box Canyon Power, or customers.
Thank you. All right, on to the sheriff candidates, and we'll start with Glenn Blakesley. How bad of a drug problem is there in Pend Oreille County, and what do you plan to do about it, if there is one?
Oh, there's a drug problem. There's drug problems everywhere. The problem just kind of keeps changing a little bit. 20 years ago when I started here, our main problem was meth labs and large marijuana grows. For the most part, the meth labs are pretty well gone. Talking to the state who helps do the training and eradication of those, I think they found one in the region in the last 2 years. They're very, very low. It's not worth their time. Marijuana laws have changed, so we're not so much after the big marijuana grows like we used to. The big issues are prescription medications, which our office is already working closely with medical staff and other folks as far as how to control that, how to keep that to a minimum. It's one of those things you're never going to be able to get rid of completely, but we need to continue to work with the providers and those who can help monitor those that are receiving medications. Methamphetamine is still a problem here, being manufactured elsewhere but being brought in, so the interdiction of that drug. So training with the deputies as far as drug interdiction on the roadways, recognizing current trends in the usage and the transportation and those types of issues with the drugs. Along with that goes the heroin is a problem. So those two kind of go hand in hand, the same basic issues. It's not having it manufactured here, it's coming in and being delivered, so interrupting that supply line. Also, we would like to work with our jail. Currently we have Alcoholics Anonymous comes in and talks to the inmates. We have chaplain service that comes in and talks to them for religious purposes. Why can't we have mental health and drug counselors also come in and start talking to these folks? They're under the influence of drugs. The most clear-headed they're ever going to be is probably the few days that they can spend in our jail until they're convicted and maybe spend longer. Try to get them when they are as clear-headed as they can be, give them options, give them ideas on how to prevent these things in their life, how to go forward. Small community, have very few resources here, so we need to maximize our usage of those.
Thank you. John Carmen, same question. How bad of a drug problem is there in Pend Oreille County, and what do you plan to do about it?
Well, as I've said earlier, over the 10 months that I've been out campaigning, every day I hear from citizens of this community. Every day from events, every day from public contacts, every day from meetings that I'm invited to talk to. Every single person that I speak with has mentioned the drug problem as one of their #1 issues. And I don't blame them, because the narcotics and the drug issues fuels so many of our other crimes in every single community. This is a known law enforcement fact. This isn't just news to Pend Oreille County. When you don't go after the narcotics and the drugs that are fueling the problems just increase. My solution is simple. We take the exact same approach that Sheriff Jerry Weeks did when he came here. He simply formed a drug unit. My approach is to add a multi-jurisdictional drug task force to it. We partner with the law enforcement agencies that already work within our community here. They've all partnered with us in the past. As I've been out, I've spoken to these agents, agencies, and people that have indicated their willingness to participate again. This is one of the #1 things that this community is asking for. We must take a proactive approach instead of a reactionary approach. I currently work for a drug task force. I currently do narcotic investigations for the Kalispell Tribal Police Department as part of my duties. It is a huge problem. Methamphetamine and the opioids are their #1 thing regionally that we deal with, and it is fueling a plethora of other crimes. We cannot sit idly by. We have to move forward with this.
Thank you. Glenn would like to challenge.
I actually kind of agree with his idea, only we already do have partnerships with folks that help us out. We've done that successfully for years. I would just simply like to point out that during 2006 to 2016, we saw his leadership ability with a drug task force. Simple numbers during that period of time, my opponent has 24 cleared adult arrests with drug crimes. During that same period of time, I have 25. Unfortunately, I was only in there from 2006 to 2011. From 2011 to 16, I was as a supervisor and did not even participate in those types of activities. So I outscored him when it was his job to do. So you have to have the proper leadership that's in there. In 2012, when I left the drug unit, he was still part of a multi-jurisdictional task force. 0 drug arrests. 0. So those things can work. You must have the proper leadership. In my opinion, he's not developed, has not shown that he has that type of leadership.
All right. And John, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, it's interesting to throw out a lot of statistics, but in the multi-jurisdictional drug task force, we shared cases. I'm not the lead on every single one. He himself was part of that. He fails to show all of the statistics. So it's easy to throw numbers out, and we've seen some recent ones that aren't exactly accurate and definitely not consistent with what this community is feeling. The bottom line is, in our first debate, he said, we do not have a drug problem. That's what he said. And yet in the recent Newport minor, we have the sheriff's office talking about how they built a new evidence locker from proceeds from drug enforcement. I challenge his statistics because they're inaccurate.
Thank you. All right. And Nicole, running for treasurer. I almost said you were running for sheriff. All right. Are there any changes you would like to make in the office operations that would bring more efficiency or better service to customers?
I don't think there'd be too many changes. I would like to figure out a way so we don't have to keep so much paper for our state auditors. So when I do figure that out, then I will implement that. But we have a very good communication with all of our other departments and all of our junior districts where, you know, if they have questions or concerns, we work together, you know, to make the county successful and financially stable. And I'll continue with that. And we also have a friendly environment for the customers so they feel comfortable coming in and asking us questions because, you know, paying taxes are not fun. So I want to continue that and implementing, you know, so people do feel comfortable with us even though they're coming in or have questions about taxes, which nobody likes to pay. So I'll just continue with those things.
Thank you. Tom, same question. Are there any changes you would make in the office operations that would bring more efficiency or better service to customers?
Currently, as far as operations and stuff go, I'm not actively involved in the day-to-day routine of the business. But I do know the leader, and the leader has had my vote for many years. I trust her in her selection of people or training of people, and she probably has an awesome staff. And I have never heard a complaint on the treasurer's office. I've been in the community for 30 years, and that's one of those ones that we've been really solid on for a long time. I haven't heard any problems. So as far as changes and stuff go, I'm not planning on making any changes. The areas I would work with would be more with the community on getting those taxes paid. Terry has been successful when she first started doing this stuff. She told me the numbers were around 500 delinquencies. Now she's down around 180. So something good's happening there. And I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to see what's going on and see if I can help people to get that. But as far as operations and stuff, accounting rules are going to apply. And we need our accuracy. We need that integrity. And you guys need to have access to that information so that you know we're being responsible with your money. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and on to the Senate race. And Karen, you are up first this time. What should the state's role be in providing health insurance to its population?
Oh, I think I touched on this earlier, which is great because I wanted to circle back to a couple of things Shelley said. So the state's role in providing health insurance really varies. The whole country is kind of moving towards a single payer system, but there's a lot of different ways that that takes shape. We want to make sure that everyone keeps the same doctors, keeps the same hospitals, keeps the same, but we need to get that 25% of the money that's being spent on overhead and administration and things that have nothing to do with your health care out of it. We need to free up businesses so that they're not having to hire people like my handsome husband to manage benefits for their employees. That's not the role of business. They need to be focused on doing business. We want to make sure that everyone has access to affordable and accessible health care. So I'm working with a couple of groups that, one of them is called Healthcare for All Washington. They had a bill last session. It got a hearing. And like I said earlier, I think legislation needs to go through and it kind of has to get ground up like sausage. There's a lot to it to make sure it comes out good legislation. There's a lot of moving parts in this. But I think the role of government is to ensure that everyone has the ability to go to the doctor. That no matter who you are, no matter what color you are, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, that never gets in the way of your health. Humans have a right to health. When most of these communities were formed, that was the first thing that the businesses did. Kaiser Permanente started the first HMOs because it was for the shipbuilders in Washington. They were also the reason that we have now for-profit health care. So things that were good got changed, and we need to get back to ensuring that everyone who puts in a good day's work and everyone who is a good citizen has absolutely the right to knowing that they're not going to go bankrupt because of health care.
Thank you. Shelley, same question. What should the state's role be in providing health insurance to its population?
So there's several different ideas I have on that. The first thing, I think fundamentally, when you think of Apple Health or our Medicaid program, is to be that safety net for folks that just because of income, because of circumstances, need that help. And that's what our system has done, and they do it very well. But I think the other thing the state needs to do is hold the insurance companies accountable. The legislation I'm going to be working on next session really would be regulating the middleman. That's the thing that insurers don't want you to know exists, but really increases the cost of what you pay and also prohibits you from getting the services you should. And I think that's a component of it as well. I think thirdly, we don't need a plan, we need many plans. Many employers, families require different things. The thing I have seen in the changes that concern me is there's less and less choice. We've seen that with the advent of Obamacare. We've seen it as we have seen plans move out of our communities where we have a single plan. And so if you're not getting it through your employer, you don't have much choice. So I see it as a 3- or 4-pronged situation that absolutely the state should be involved in, and I'm ready to get to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, excuse me, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much. I am on healthcare. So what happens is the federal government puts out regulations, and then we get to respond very quickly here in Washington State. So we've done a great job responding. So when the ACA passed, we responded quickly by enacting over 400% poverty level to the Medicaid, Medicare system. So we have a very strong system in the state of Washington. But the problem is when you reach over that level, it is almost impossible to buy insurance. I hear people all the time say, you know, I want to start a business, but I have to pay $3,000 a month to start a business. I want to move to Pend Oreille County. I want to move to Stevens County. However, it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. So that's what happens with a single-payer system. A single-payer system is not going to pass in the state of Washington, even with a Democrat House, Democrat Senate, and a Democrat governor. The reason is we cannot pay for that. With the reimbursements at 25% on average, it would be astronomical costs. So what we need to do is allow open competitiveness. So make those insurance companies bid for the lowest cost for you. Because if they open it across state lines, we need the federal government to stop regulating the state of Washington, because I promise you we could do this, and let us bid for lowest price. If they continue to force all of us in the Medicaid, Medicare system, we're losing providers, we're losing doctors, we're losing young kids, we're losing families, we're using entrepreneurs that we want to bring into the area. So one of the biggest issues I hear in the office is I cannot afford my health insurance. I don't make low enough, and I want to start a business. And those small businesses that have to provide insurance for groups are not able to join with other people and provide their and purchase insurance. And we have to be able to allow them to do that, because we are holding our own economy down. So it's really important that we open that up and do a strong open market and really hold those insurance policies accountable.
Thank you. And Randy, what should the state's role be in providing health insurance to its population?
If you look at Republic Hospital, for example, if you look at Republic Hospital and the debt ratio that they were carrying prior to ACA, aka Obamacare, prior to that, their ratio for uninsured patients was going up every year. Their debt load was going that because they are required by law to provide services even if someone walks in without insurance. When ACA came in, whether you liked it or not, it began to save your rural hospitals, because what happened is everyone that walked in was insured, or most everyone. And that then allowed that hospital to remain solvent. As the Trump administration has begun to unravel what took place for the Obamacare or ACA, we begin to see then chaos or difficulties in the insurance markets in the states, because they took away the incentive for them to be there. And that is what we have to have. I actually don't disagree entirely with one of the statements that was made by my Republican opponent, and that we do have to have insurance companies under control. But if we don't address this, then we will be putting our hospitals, our rural hospitals, back at risk again. I do have to say that Democrats have been committed to the idea of health care for everyone. And I have to remind you that the Republican Party voted 50 times to dismantle ACA, 50 times. And then when they got a hold of it, they couldn't figure out what to do with it. This goes back to my earlier statement about a vision. We need to have a vision of pulling together and having a solution that will work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're down to our last round of questions. So we're going to start with Dan Peterson, and actually I have a specific question for you, and then I have a specific question for you. All right, Dan. How does your travel reimbursements compare to the two other PUD commissioners, and do you think that travel was justified?
I actually don't know how to answer the first part. A number of years ago, I started keeping a chart of our total budget for the three commissioners for travel, and those three numbers for each of us, and did that comparison. Recently, I haven't done that. In fact, April, if you're still here, remind me, we need to update that. But in a number of years, I tended to travel either a little bit more, or in some cases, a lot more than the other two. And that had primarily to do with my involvement in leadership of regional organizations. So some years it's more, some years it's equal, I would get. That's a bit of an educated estimate. The way the reimbursement works, however, is kind of interesting because, for instance, last week I was in Washington, D.C. How do I decide to do any trip or go to any meeting? I do a quick cost-benefit analysis in my mind. How much is it going to cost me, cost you actually, for me to go to this? And how much benefit am I going to be able to bring back to you as a result? But it's not just you. It's also Pend Oreille Newsprint Company. So when I was in Washington, D.C. last week in my role as chairman of the Public Power Council, that entire travel was paid for and directly billed to Pend Oreille Newsprint Company because they're the ones that receive Bonneville Power. And the PPC is a watchdog agency on Bonneville Power rates, and I'm committed to keeping Pend Oreille Newsprint in business as long as we can. So anything that relates to their service, they pay for directly, and my travel and the other two commissioners' travel in total is paid between the production and the electric, and Pend Oreille Newsprint pays a good share of that as well.
Thank you, Dan. All right, Joe, your question. How did your employment with the PUD come to an end? And do you think that history will hinder your ability to legislate the PUD in a manner that is best for its ratepayers?
I would have to categorize employment with the PUD came to an end in a termination. I was let go after 30 years in Coos County in 8 days. But I have my proudest accomplishment was working with the PUD and doing what I did for the community. I think I could put that behind me. It's almost nice being retired now. And I have a vision for the PUD. I think I'll do a good job. Again, my little quote, I'm not sure if I made it up or saw it somewhere, but I was in the salt mine for a long time. And I think I know where there's some good things that are happening. And with my institutional knowledge, I think there's some not so good things happening that I'd like to see changed. You know, not necessarily get into specifics, but I think there can be cost containment. Let's eyeball that litigation. There's been massive litigation, myself as being one of them. That concludes my answer.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. All right, and the sheriff's race. And this time, John Carmen goes first. And for the rest of you, I've got the same question for all the candidates. How crucial is 24/7 coverage? Is it part of your plan if elected? If so, how do you plan to pay for it? And will you do patrols if you're elected sheriff?
Again, when we listen to the community, it is their #1 complaint. When we look at surrounding communities that utilize 24-hour patrol, having worked for law enforcement agencies that utilize 24-hour patrol, we know that there is validity to them. We've got to do something to take away the free time that our criminals have to victimize this community, often repeatedly. In order to do that, you have to look outside the box. You have to look at something. The 8-hour shifts that we're currently using aren't working. You don't have to believe me. Talk to your neighbors. 12-hour shifts are the way to achieve that in the most economical way. There's been dozens of studies done, dozens. The savings you use just in overtime alone, you can make work for you to cover the cost. They're the #1 used patrol for departments this size with our manpower. So, what's my plan? To implement 12-hour shifts. We've looked at numerous 12-hour shifts. We have communicated with the union that provides 12-hour shifts and schedules and is in negotiation with other law enforcement surrounding us. We've sat down and looked at them, and we've come up with several options that will work. Oftentimes, I hear that they say it can't be done here. But what we know is when you don't want something to work, you stop looking for answers. What we do know is when you do want something to work, which is what this community has asked for over and over and over again, we've looked at multiple options that can work. All we have to do now is sit down, negotiate with the union, decide which one of them best represents the needs of this community. We can and will make them work because they do.
Thank you, John. And Glenn, how crucial is 24/7 coverage? Is it part of your plan if elected? If so, how do you plan to pay for it? And will you do patrols if elected sheriff? Which actually, John, you didn't answer that last part, did you? Sorry.
I'll make it real quick then. So, as far as will I patrol, there are administrative duties that the sheriff must and needs to take care of. There are the same things that go with the undersheriff. Those things must be met. But I guarantee you that there are times with our schedule that you can be out on patrol, assisting and helping and being present with your deputies. And in every single circumstance, I will make time for those because I believe that's important, along with the administrative duties in the office.
Thank you. And we'll add 30 seconds to your time, Glenn.
Okay. I could actually use 20 or 30 minutes to answer this one because there's
No.
a lot of angles to it. Seems like a simple problem. There is no simple solution to this. Currently, you have 24-hour coverage. You just don't have a physical body running around out there doing things. If you have an emergency going on in your area, call. We'll send somebody. Pure and simple. Okay? So we work 8-hour shifts because they are the most efficient and most effective for our current situation. There are 39 counties in Washington State. 13 of them provide coverage in a very similar manner to what we do. There are counties very close to us that I won't name that have twice the staffing that we have. That service in very much the same manner that we do. I'm not going to name them because I think it's unfair to them to advertise to bad guys what the schedule is. So, 12-hour schedules. The one that I have heard about, that Mr. Carmen has come up with, gives you 2 people on patrol during the day shift when 92% of your calls for service happen. And 2 people at night when you have 8% of your activities going on. Think about going down to Safeway during the middle of the day and they have 2 cashiers. What does it cause? Cause a backup. You can't get to the calls fast enough. There are times where we have 3, 4, 5 guys on and we can't keep up with the activity that's going on. Guess what? You cut that down to 2 people, you now have a long delay in some of the response times you're going to have regarding whatever's going on in your area. So there's a safety factor. There's a lot of calls that deputies must go to with 2 people. You've got them both tied up. Who's going to cover the north end of your county when you have both of your deputies down here answering calls all the time? The north end will get no coverage, day shift or night shift. That's not acceptable. There are so many things that you could go into that, the cost. We have a night shift differential. We're already paying out 5% for most of our guys that work night shift. You extend those hours out, there's now a 10% differential. That's got to be calculated in. It costs money. If I have 2 people on patrol and one of those has to go home sick or that person is on vacation, who's covering that 12-hour shift? I have to pay somebody to do it, so now I'm costing overtime. All these little things get calculated in, and those and many, many others. I'm out of time. Again, I could take a long time and explain all these to you, but it is not feasible right now.
All right. John, you have a minute to challenge.
A minute to challenge. Okay, so here we go. Again, if you don't want it to work, you're going to make it not work. The bottom line is they currently are running the same issue that he just described that we're going to have for 12s, which is people that are only oftentimes 1 or 2 on shift. They worked all summer long with 1 deputy in the north end. Now, the bottom line is that's inaccurate, and I'm not really sure where he's heard my plan, because I've said every single time and every time I've spoken with this, I've yet to lay out a plan because it's one of those things that we have to agree upon. I have multiple options, and we'll sit down and do it. But the bottom line is this community, getting somebody called out isn't working either, because I hear it every single day, the calls that aren't being answered because there's no deputies available and they're not calling them out. So again, If you don't want it to work, it's easy to stop looking for solutions.
Thank you. Glenn, you have 30 seconds to rebut and answer the question whether or not you'll patrol if you're elected sheriff.
If time allows, but as any administrator knows, there's a lot of duties when you're running. People get the idea that we just run patrol. We have a dispatch center, we have a corrections center, we have the civil department, we have emergency management. The sheriff is responsible for every one of those things. So we're running shorthanded in those departments as well. So am I supposed to pull shifts in dispatch and corrections as well? You know, potentially, but there's a lot to do when you've got approximately 40 employees, 5 different departments. There's a lot that goes on there. So if time allows, sure, but it's not going to be a regular planned event.
Thank you. All right. And treasurer. And we will start with Tom this time. All right. Part of a treasurer's duties is to invest on behalf of the county. What would your investment style be?
First of all, like I said earlier, we're governed by state and federal law as far as what we can invest in. So the list of potential investments has already been established, and we adopt that. And then within that, we are allowed to pick specific investments that we want to be involved in, because not every investment may be good for our county. Like I said before, also currently 98% of the 23 million, it's a little over 22 million, is in the investment pool in the state, which is an awesome deal. It's safe. It allows same-day liquidity. We can pull money out to meet demands and those things. But it also is not getting a very high rate of return. Now, the way the finances have been, you guys know your stock market and everything else, it bounces around. So really 2.01% hasn't been bad to have an awesome, safe spot to put money. But now that interest rates are changing and there may be some other opportunities, I would like to look at some of those other opportunities that the state allows us to do. Also, I would be willing to talk to specific entities that have been fiscally responsible, because we have some guys that are sitting out there, some agencies that we account for, that are sitting on a lot of money that's really not doing anything. If they really don't need it, if they're willing to come up and talk to us and give us some guidance on what they want us to do with their money, I'm willing to listen. But of course, the end result is going to be the finance committee, which is the auditor, the treasurer, and then the chairman of your county commissioners. And they're really the ones that are going to make that final decision. But I would like to see some of that money, if we really aren't needing it for the day activities, I'd like to see some of that money earn that extra, little bit, quarter of a point would be good.
All right. Nicole, same question. Part of the treasurer's duties is to invest on behalf of the county. What would your investment style be?
Well, I'll probably continue following the model of current treasurer Terry Miller. And a lot of it's going to depend on what the other entities and stuff are doing, what big projects we have, how often we need the money. If we have some kind of an emergency, you want it to be somewhere that you can pull it out relatively quickly. That's one thing that's good about the LGIP. It does have a really good interest rate, actually probably the highest it's been since I've worked there in 8 years. And other interest rates are going up. We did just invest in a low-risk bond that we're doing now, and we'll see how that goes. And after that, like I said, depends on what the interest rates and what the market does. And I'll continue to take, finance classes and hear from other people in the state to be what would be best for the county.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Excuse me. State legislature, and we'll start with the Senate race. Shelley, you're up. The high rate of mental health issues is becoming more and more apparent, whether it be mass shootings, opioid addiction, or PTSD. What role, if any, should the state have in addressing mental health?
Oh, huge issue. It is a huge issue. I actually supported legislation last year that would increase the capacity. Because it's both a shortage of capacity, so they're not in our jails and in our hospital rooms, and it is also a provider issue as well, a professional provider issue. We have a shortage of mental health providers. Both of those are issues that we addressed last session. We're hoping to bring that first one back up on the capacity piece because there'll be bonding requirements for that. but it is both that capacity and really making mental health, accessible as you would a primary care. My brother's a law enforcement officer, and he sees it every day. I know these gentlemen see it every day. You see it in your hospitals, you see it in your communities, your neighborhoods, your schools, and it is really incumbent on it to treat it as it is. It needs to be something that is accessible as you would primary care. And there are also some ideas that we've had as far as the school system's concerned, specific to maybe embedding mental health counselors. Our school counselors do an amazing job, but they can't do that too. And so there's actually a pilot that's been done by the ESD in Spokane, where they've actually embedded mental health counselors to, get to know the families, and if they're in crisis, to hopefully avert, something from happening. And they have been getting really good results in both grade school and middle school. So I think there are a number of things we need to look at, and it's going to be a huge topic this session.
Fantastic, thank you. And Karen, same question. You want it repeated?
Sure.
All right. The high rate of mental health issues is becoming more and more apparent, whether it be mass shootings, opioid addiction, or PTSD. What role, if any, should the state have in addressing mental health?
Well, like most things, first off, we have to put it in the budget. So as the things Shelley just talked about are all great, but again, she voted against funding the budget. She voted against the Health Care Bill of Rights, and we have 23 schools in the 7th legislative district that don't even have a counselor, more or less embedding a mental health counselor. Our district has been underfunded and underserved for 28 years. So it's not surprising that we're seeing these results here. Mental health care is health care. When I say health care, I mean from podiatry to psychiatry. From your head to your toe, that's health care. When we talk about a single payer, a lot of the information Jacqueline gave was just straight up wrong, but it comes right out of this book, so I'll let you guys all read it later. And it's about making sure we have access to services. We don't have a psychiatrist in the 7th who can write prescriptions for the PTSD drugs that the veterans need. 50% of the suicides in Stevens County this year were veterans. This is an epidemic, and it has not been addressed. So we are going to have to put money in the budget. We are going to have to appropriate funds. We are going to have to put this to the front of the line, and that can't be done with platitudes, and that can't be done with sitting on committees. That has to be done with actual legislation and actual appropriations, and actually getting in there and demanding that the healthcare clinic here in Newport, that the hospital in Republic, that the hospital in Chewelah, that the hospital in Colville have psychiatrists, have psychologists on staff, that critical care has psychiatric care, not just a TNT bed, not just a treat and release bed, actual treatment for people who are suffering. It is our #1 cause of death for 45 to 65-year-olds. We have to do something.
All right, and Shelley, challenge, do you have 1 minute?
Yes, so actually it requires legislation before you can even put anything in the budget. So the legislation that actually came forward was not voted out of committee, so it would not be funded in the budget. Part of it was a capital budget piece, which is separate from the operating budget, but there is a legislative process that does actually start in committees. And the work we actually did to incentivize actually students who wish to become psychologists and actually look at doing reimbursement or paying for some of their college, trying to incentivize students to take those fields of study were things that I worked in higher ed. So really everything does actually start at the committee level.
Yeah, you have 30 seconds, Karen.
It does start in committee, and Shelley actually was she was the chair of the local government committee, and she's now the ranking member of the local government committee, and that's who gets finances for counties. But she didn't put anything in committee. She didn't actually write anything for the committee. She just sits on the committee. So you actually have to do the committee work. We need someone who's going to do the work. And right now, it's evident by what we're talking about. These sheriffs are talking about it. Our community's talking about it. I'm not making this up, and I'm not picking on Shelley, but it's not getting done. So if we want to keep getting the same results, keep sending the same people.
Thank you. All right, and Randy, same question. The high rate of mental health issues is becoming more and more apparent, whether it be mass shootings, opioid addiction, or PTSD. What role, if any, should the state have in addressing mental health?
So I have some pretty strong feelings about this that are pretty personal, so I'll just tell you this story real quickly. In the June of 2016, my daughter Caitlin, who's 33 years old, was awarded the Teacher of the Year at Gonzaga Prep. She had taught there for a year. Within a year, in fact, at the end of this month, it will be the anniversary of her taking her own life. And that happened because of mental health issues. So she had a kind of an atypical, late in life, I'm sorry, attack, if you will, of something called schizoaffective disorder. We did everything we could. We're a smart family, we're a well-resourced family, we're an educated family. We would put her in Sacred Heart, and they would stabilize her and release her, and they would send her back to the family. There was no place to go during the day. They would, this is 6 times during that year. Put her in the hospital, stabilize her, diagnose it, change the medication, released her back to her family. She'd had cancer. We would have moved into a cancer clinic. We've been working, she'd be in Fred Hutchinson. We'd be getting chemo, we'd be surgery. If she had been an alcoholic, we would have had a residential rehab facility. If she had been hurt in a car accident, we would have worked it in a rehab. Instead, it's treat, stabilize, and release back in the streets. I finally got a hold of her husband, Adam, and we just said, we've got to do something different. We found a one-day program, one in the state of Washington in Swedish Hospital. I just pulled out my checkbook, and I said, Adam, just go there. Move to Seattle, live in a hotel, take the dogs, and let's see if we can have a day program. It was called the post-hospitalization program. And they would treat her during the day. After 3 weeks, go back to Spokane. There's a lot we need to do.
Thank you, Randy, very much for sharing that with us. Jacqueline?
Thank you I'm just going to talk about, we all know it's a problem. I'm just going to talk about what I've done in the last year. I've supported the governor's bill, supported funding for mental health funding. I supported a suicide prevention bill, and I wrote the veteran service officer bill to make sure that there's a veteran service officer in every single county. So to get assistance, you're not driving to Spokane Valley. With respect to the local area, Representative Kretz and Senator Short have worked on a short-term a facility within Colville, so that facility has been built with the hospital. We need to make sure there's places for people to go. In addition, you know, I have spoke on the House floor, and we're working hard to get what's called a BHO in our region. It's really hard to get qualified psychiatrists and psychologists to work because of the Medicaid reimbursement in our area. So what they do is they regionalize it. So in attaching to your healthcare, when you go see a healthcare provider, they're now forced to ask you questions to make sure you can have access. And I've been working hard to make sure we have providers in our area so you're not traveling to Seattle and we never hear another story like this, that we take care of our kids now and we take care of everyone that has this problem.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our round of questioning. Now, you each have 1 minute to tell us why we should vote for you, and we'll start with Joe, running for PUD Commissioner.
Well, I believe in community. I was the one that named our system with the PUD, the community network system. I was the one had a vision and came up with the slogan, community. It is in our every fiber, and believe in that. I was also on the team that came up with the quality service at low cost, and I truly believe in that. Would like to support that. I know my incumbent here, he believes in it too. It's just our mission. So, community, I was 20 years on the Ponderosa County Planning Commission, 10 years on the Economic Development Council, twice and currently treasurer for our church. I was a Citizen of the Year in 2002, awarded by Tri-County EDC. I was a volunteer firefighter for 10 years. So, with that, I want to say that My job would be to protect our low rates, keep them low, set policy to control spending, and support our large industry in the county, and my time is up. Thank you.
Right on time. Thank you, Joe. And Dan Peterson, running for PUD Commissioner.
So I feel like I need to just take a really deep breath. And as I do that, I want to see if I can really see you, look at you, and get some eye contact here. I wish you could be up here and see yourselves. It is, I don't know what we look like, but you are a beautiful sight. You're attentive. Some of you are frowning at times. Some of you are smiling at times. Your heads go different directions depending on what's being said and who's saying it. But the reason I want to get a good look at you is because I don't know if you can see this, but whenever I open my wallet, I don't find $1 million in there, but there's a little yellow strip of paper that I keep in the very front. And I wrote this a long time ago after one of these nights and one of these elections. That's why it's Scotch taped together. It's the same one I wrote then. Whoops, just came apart. And it says, remember those who put you here. That's what I'll do.
Thank you, Dan. And Glenn Blakesley, running for sheriff.
Well, I've been here 20 years. This is my home. I grew up here, like I said earlier. This is my home. This is what I do. I've taken the time throughout my career to try and advance. Again, went from deputy to detective to sergeant and trying to move on from there. I can tell you all kinds of flowery stuff about myself, but it really doesn't mean much to anybody. I gauge it more by those who support and endorse me. So I'll give you a real quick list of professionals in the law enforcement field who endorse me for this position. Current sheriff and undersheriff, Alan Bott, Simon Grant, Servog. Retired sheriff and undersheriff, Jerry Weeks and Mike Kress. Well, not hired both of us. Mr. Kendall Allen, the sheriff of Stevens County. Mr. Ray Maycumber, the sheriff of Ferry County. Lee Bennett, the chief of police from Airway Heights, and also formerly from the city of Newport. Tom Metzger, the previous prosecutor for this county for many, many years. The ones I'm most proud of, the deputies of Pend Oreille County. They took it upon themselves to talk to both of us, and they voted to unanimously endorse me for this position, and shortly after that, the dispatch and corrections also gave a majority endorsement for me to take this position. So,
Thank you, Glenn. And John Carmen, running for sheriff.
So reasons to vote for me. I've been in law enforcement for 18 years. 15 of those were spent here. The majority of my career has been spent in investigations, putting criminals behind bars. The reason to vote for me is because I have the plan that's gotten me the endorsements of Teamsters 690, of the Kalispel Tribe, as well as the Pend Oreille County Republicans. Mr. Blakesley has ran a campaign on, we're going to do the status quo, we're going to keep going. And that's good, but it's not what this community is asking for. Daily, you know that I'm putting in the work because I'm in your barbecues, I'm at your neighborhood meetings, I'm at your businesses, and I'm there because I'm invited to be there. We are putting in the footwork, and we're listening to you, and the plan that I have laid out has been resonating because it is the plan the citizens of this community is asking for.
Thank you, John. Nicole Dice, running for county treasurer.
Hi. I think that I would be the perfect candidate because I have over 20 years of experience in government finance. Currently work in the treasurer's office. I know the ins and outs of all of the computer programs and all the jobs to do to get the office, keep it running. And I've been endorsed by the current treasurer, Terry Miller, previous treasurer, Charlotte Demlow, Teamsters Union 690, and the Pend Oreille County Republican Party. I enjoy serving the public. I want to be helpful to the public, help them make our office feel welcome, and that's everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And Tom Watson, running for county treasurer.
I can give you my resume. I've been successful in business for a long time. I would challenge that probably the majority of this room has known me over the years. If you don't, your neighbors do. So I've proven myself as far as being able to run a business. I've been financially responsible for their investments and the success of that, and working with the community. All four of our kids have graduated through this school. We've been here that long, 30 years. Right now we've got 4 grandkids that are currently enrolled in this school system. We're well-founded in it. I've supported this community. Virtually every nonprofit organization we have supported over the years, either through the store or ourselves. So we're very well-founded in this community. And my business success, really, you guys are my reference, because it's really up to you guys. You guys saw me. I was in front of you for so many years. You've known my character. You've known my style. It didn't change for 30 years. And so really, you are the references I need. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And Karen Hardy, running for State Senate.
So why should you vote for me? Well, I kind of feel like I should go back to where I started the first time I was in Newport and talk about my horse. So in 2013, my daughter and I rode horses all the way across Europe, 1,700 miles in 6 months, 2 of us and 3 horses, 5 souls. We did it because we wanted to. We did it because we said we were going to. When I moved here, I got a ballot and it had 1 name on it. And I got another ballot and had 1 name on it. From 2010 to 2016, every ballot that you got had Shelley Short's name on it and no one's next to it. I said I was going to fix that. And so I set out to fix that. I ran last year. It's about doing what you say you're going to do. It's about standing up. I've been here not looking for your vote. I've been here asking how I can help. I've been to your meetings finding out, what do you need? How can I help? I have been here since I have moved back home to Washington State. I've made it my goal to help my neighbors, and that's what I wanted to do with my retirement and with my life. So I'm asking you to give me the opportunity to go serve you and help you. I appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Karen. And Senator Shelley Short.
Thank you so much. It has been an incredible honor to serve in the legislature on your behalf. And I have to say, the whole time that I've done this position, it's been where there, saying that where there's a will, there's a way, and to not accept the status quo, and to utilize every piece of the process, whether it's legislative in your communities, working with groups of people, stakeholders, to get things done. It could be that budget amendment. It could be a policy amendment. It could be getting groups of legislators together to try and come up with a solution. But there are so many different ways that the process can work to benefit the communities. And I have been able to utilize that process to the benefit of the 7th District, and I would be so honored to continue to have your support. I'd ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. And Representative Jacqueline Maycumber.
Hello, I'm going to stand. So I'm going to address my statements to the tech team, which I know you guys and Polly Sy are going to watch this later. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, or your beliefs. You just keep going. Don't let people's poor attitudes or statements slow you down. And whatever ideas you have for the future and your dreams, just keep going and don't let anybody stop you. And I promise that I will do the best I can, and I will make sure to provide the opportunities for you for tomorrow so you can come back and be standing here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Randy McCalis, running for State Representative.
You've gotten really good at the names.
Thank you.
Let's just take a second and look at the vital signs of the 7th District. Your hospitals are in debt. Your schools are struggling. You are just now trying to figure out broadband. You have 23 schools that don't even have a counselor. Oreille County has the highest domestic violence per capita in the state of Washington. And we have 3 corner counties with the highest unemployment in the state of Washington. So why wouldn't you vote for me? Let's take somebody who's had a life of accomplishment and vision, and let's bring about a change. I'm Randy McCalis. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's it. So, like I said, ballots go in the mail Friday. Just make sure you vote, regardless of who you vote for. And thank you so much for being here. And there's lots of great information out in the lobby from your candidates. Thanks,